However, when I was checking in on my last flight, it gave me the opportunity to fly first class for free, all the flights. And I was like, yes, please. And so now I'm usually in those kind of seats where you have to sit like this and you have to keep your arms like this. And if you even breathe, you feel like you're in the person's way beside me. I've been sitting with my legs up like this, switched up, until these flights. Y'all, it was great. It was great. I sat down and I thought, wow, my arm doesn't even touch the person's arm beside me. It had this little thing in between where you could set things. And y'all, the tray that came down, it was like humongous. And it was great. And not only that, but they treat you like you're at a 5-star restaurant. They say, this is why people are loading. They're going, ma'am, can I get you something to drink? And I'm like, this is great. And so, pretty soon, it was so great and I felt so great, I didn't even pay attention to people passing by me going to those other seats. In fact, it really didn't matter to me. Jesus makes greatness and makes that word great look completely different. To our worship symbol. Don't let this make your stomach start failing. I got me some. It's already there. Poor Mike. I'm sorry, we didn't make up individual servings today like we usually do. So I've got some Kellogg's Frosted Flakes here. Raise your hand if you've eaten some of these before. Haven't most of us. Yeah, they really are great, aren't they? They may be calling on you after I tell you the rest of the story. So, do you know this happened in 1898 when two brothers with the last name Kellogg accidentally flaked some wheat berries. In 2018, their profit was $3.5 billion in 2018. Now, they have this tiger on it. That's their icon. That's their brand. And what does Tony the Tiger do? Do it again. The profit is falling because consumers now want more health-minded breakfast food. They're almost to the point, if they don't transform their brand and their product, the very product they created will be what is their demise. It kills them. Now, not the wheat berry that they flaked, but the product they created from the wheat berry, from the way they packaged it to what they added to it. That made me think a little bit about the church as an institution this week, anywhere in the world. There's nothing wrong with the gospel. Amen. There's nothing wrong with Jesus Christ and a God that loves and gives mercy to all, loves unconditionally, excludes no one. But it makes me think about the way that the church as an institution across the globe has added to the gospel the way that it has packaged it and presented it. And that the very way the church as an institution has done that could very well be its demise someday. If, like the Kellogg Company, it doesn't transform itself. Jesus makes greatness look different. The Roman Empire, they were all about greatness and all about class and where someone fell in that. So greatness had some tangible feelings, looks, and thoughts and ways of being. So the top 2% of the people were, let's call it, great. Say that again. Great. And the other 98% had no chance of ever being great. So we're going to talk about that top 2% first. So let me have a volunteer. Debbie, come up. So there were the senators, 600 of them, who worked right under Caesar. Okay? Following them, and they had money and power. Following them were what were called the equestrians, and they had, you might imagine, horses that could be used in the military. So let me have an equestrian come up. Frida, she's raising her hand. She likes horses. So they were the equestrians, wealthy with horses that could be used in the military. So they're next. Then there were what we call the Queens. And they would have been wealthy officials in the government, not like these, another tier lower, as well as the priesthood. So why don't you come up and hold that for us? Mike, will you come up? The top 2% of the people. These people are great. Then we get to the other 98% of the folks who weren't considered great, who had no hope of being great. And everyone in here is great. They have every hope of being great, provided you're doing it in the way of Jesus, which we're going to talk about as we kind of go through this. And so when we get into the other 98%, even they had a strata, a ranking. And so the first ones were the Roman citizens. Marita, will you come up and be a Roman citizen? So Roman citizens, they were protected. They couldn't be crucified. They were protected by law, and they had lots of rights within the whole Roman Empire. After them were the freedmen. Someone a little taller. Miss Jean, will you come up? The freedmen weren't Roman citizens, but they had liberty. And then at the bottom of that 98% were the slaves. I need someone. Are you taller, Bill, than Jean? Oh, there you go, Drake. Come on up. I think you can stand on your tippy toes good if you're not. Yeah, so now you can see the order that it went. So this was the top 2%, and this was the 98% that had no chance, and really no choice of ever being great. So we've got senators, the equestrians, the decurions, the citizens, the freedmen, and then the slaves. Okay, so give them a big hand. Now that you've seen them and you've seen that order, and I'm going to let you go, just lay your papers down here, and I'll let you go sit down. Now, not only did their greatness show up in just their titles and the wealth that they had, it also showed up in the way that they did that. Who was the freedman in that? In that Jean, she would have worn a cap that would have denoted that she was a freedman. Any young man, 14 years or older, would have worn a toga. A senator would have had purple stripes somewhere on his robe, and an equestrian would have had the toga on as well, but instead would have had gold rings. Jesus wore a seamless robe that was the symbol of his royal priesthood and the new covenant. Jesus changed the way that great looked. The wealthy would have owned land. They did no manual labor. Remember, the great, the top 2%, they walked the red carpet. But Jesus was a carpenter or a stonemason. You see, Jesus changed the way that great looks and even the occupation. Amen. There were also different laws for the rich and for the poor. If you were wealthy, there was a set of laws for you. And if you were poor, there was another set. In fact, really the act of a crucifixion was reserved more for servants. It was a servant's death. Jesus died a servant's death. You see, greatness looks different with Jesus. But Jesus' crucifixion on the cross is not only about our personal redemption, our personal salvation, our personal relationship. It's about Jesus in the midst of his crucifixion and in that act, crucifying this culture as well. It's about the death of a culture that elevated the greatest of these and left behind the least of these. It's about crucifying that Roman culture in a global sense. So this is not just a table of a personal meal. It's about Jesus taking that one act in history and saying the least shall be first. My culture of love has come. When the Romans shared a meal, they would invite that 2%. And they would also invite those who weren't as wealthy as them to the meal. And the ones that were great received a meal according to their greatness. So that might mean that Patricia, as a great one at that meal, if you'll receive this plate, you might get filet mignon. I'm going to make up modern day stuff, okay? And that might mean if you weren't as wealthy, relating it to today, a TV dinner, Spam, whatever you can think of. This is the culture that when Jesus hung on that cross, as were our sins being forgiven and all those things that we celebrate here at the table, at that moment, so was that culture that we've just laid out in simplistic terms being put to death. There's an orphan in South Africa. And in this particular township, and in many townships there, AIDS is an epidemic. And in many homes, like hundreds of thousands of homes, there are children caring for children because the parents have died. Most of the girls that grow up in that township, before they get to the orphanage, before they're the age of 12, looking to see who we have in here to make sure these words are safe, they're raped before they're the age of 12. And because there's this myth that you can be cured of AIDS by knowing a woman in the way that you biblically know a woman, the myth is that if you know a woman in the way biblically, and she's a virgin, then that will heal you. That's the way these children arrive at this orphanage. So if you walk into this orphanage, you'll meet this little girl at the counter named Maury. And she's a little bit ashamed of her teeth, so she doesn't smile real big, but her eyes just dance when she sees. She'll tell you about her life. And if you go on to the next room, there's a little boy named Philip. And Philip loves to lead people around the orphanage to show them the different rooms. And as he leads you, and you look down at that little hand inside of your hand, you'll see where before he was at the orphanage, where the rats had gnawed at his little fingers, had bitten off parts of it. So I ask you, in that particular story, who is great? Who deserves first class in that story? We serve a liberator. We serve a liberator who moved that line around. You can hear the chairs scraping. You can see the seats being thrown around on the airplane and the people being moved, readjusted and reshaped and turned it all upside down so that the least of these is, and you know the answer, the least of these is first and the least of these is the great one. You'd think we'd be acting different 2,000 years later. And there's hope because it's the Holy Spirit that works within us. Because in and of ourselves alone, it is really hard to want to move out of that first class. Y'all, I watched those people go by and I was glad I wasn't them. I was so comfortable that I finally wouldn't be watching them go by. It was like they didn't exist. And you would think more than 2,000 years later, we wouldn't operate in any sense of the word, in any moment, like someone else didn't exist, like they were invisible, like they didn't matter, like they weren't worthy. And yet, I do, you do, we do, as neighborhoods we do, as families gathered at tables, as a nation, and globally we do. When we come to this table, greatness elevates the least of these. Greatness shifts that servant to the front of the line, first class. And this table, that act on the cross, that crucifixion, forever put death to that culture of superiority and of what the Romans saw that made people great. And it happened because Jesus came into this world and he was wrapped in swaddling cloths, not a toga. He never owned any land. And he left this world wrapped only in the towel of a servant. And greatness looks different now.